I take you off of the mannequin? Oh, there's it. $20.
Okay.
This is really cute.
It is. Pull it all the way.
Let's see.
Let's see what repairs need to happen here. I'll just set it on here. See where these buckles look like. So that one's choppy chopped, but not terrible. Do these buckles match or are these plastic? Oh, all the same. Cool. This is
cute.
Hello again. Nick here with another thrift score that needs a little bit of help. I'm going to see what I can do. See this really cool leather backpack. All stitched, a few rivets. Got some gray age to it without a lot of damage or cracking of the leather. So I've already, it was pretty dry as you can imagine. So I already oiled it down to soften up the leather and rejuvenate it a bit. Use the old Neat's Foot oil. This is good because a lot of leather conditioners are animal derived, mink squeezins, and we want to avoid that. So Neat's Foot oil is great. Though the one thing you have to know with Neat's Foot oil is whatever leather you apply it to, it's going to darken it no matter what you do. And I will find the footage of when we found this, and you can see how much of a blonder, lighter leather this was before I oiled the whole thing down. But we had no problem with that because I think that makes it look even better. And all the leather is supple again. Yeah, after inspecting it, the main thing was that this strap, this one's fine, perfectly good, nothing wrong with it. And it is riveted here on the bottom. This one, for some reason, is not riveted, it's just stitched in. This might have been a repair, almost looks that way. But a strong repair, though maybe not so aesthetically great, but you can see the rivet in there. But this one, you can see this is a pretty big ouch right here. It's dried so much and stressed there, so it's starting to crack. And so this, since this is where the weight's going to be held, we definitely want to fix that. Otherwise, it's just waiting to snap. Everything else about it is just fine. We just need to fix this. Initially, I thought of just patching a little backing leather behind here, which would have been just fine because the rest of it's pretty good. But after searching through the leather I have, I found this guy, exact same width, a shade thicker, but that's only to its benefit. That's a little thicker. Color and texture is a tad bit different, but I'm going to say it's close enough for this old girl. And what I'm going to do is we're going to cut it maybe somewhere around here, and then we're going to add this. And I'm going to try something I haven't done with leather yet, and is actually stitch it so it matches the rest of the bag assembly, which is all stitched like this. So I ordered in some punches to punch in the perforations to sew the fabric through. Let me show you those. Pretty cool. I'm always down for new tools for a new job. I mean, you can kind of see those here. Little forks that you take a hammer and tap into the leather, and then you get your little line of perforations to sew the thread through. And there's the big fork is for big lines of stitching all the way along. The little ones are for getting around curves better. So just 2 by 2 by 2, kind of make your way around the curve as you punch in the holes. So we're going to try that. First time I've done that. And then we'll do a little square box of stitching and replace that handle strap with this one. And this is a pretty dark piece of leather, but I sanded it down, oiled it down to darken it a bit, so it's close It's a little more suede-y on the back than these are. But again, we're calling that good, and it's going to be a strong repair. Way better than what's there. So it's oiled up. It's ready to be stitched, and I already rounded the end so it matched what was there initially, the little round end. And there are rounded punches. I don't have it here with me, but there's a little round-shaped chisel that you tap on the end of this, and it makes a perfect round end on it. So already did that. All right, so we're going to take it outside on the cement and punch some holes in it and get it ready to go. Here we go. Okay, setting this up to put the perforations in for the stitching. And here's that punch the holes through. And I've taken some basic spring clamps and clamped the new and the old piece of leather together so they're lined up. And I was gonna do some measuring to see where to put these holes, but now that I look, if you see that punch fits just fine on the width. So what we'll do is punch through both layers of leather that way, pivot it, hope you can see that from that angle, punch it on the side, pivot it, punch it on the bottom, pivot it once more to make the full square, punch those, and then we'll hand stitch that together, and it should be a good solid fix. So now we will take this assembly outside to punch it on the concrete, and we've got the healing mat here, which is like a really hard rubber. So when you punch through the leather, you don't end up punching into something hard like concrete, so you dull your tools and mar them up. So this will go underneath it. Let's take a hammer, tap through both things of leather, and that should have them lined up and ready to stitch. Let's see how we do. The mat underneath, clamped together. We got our selection of ninja weapons here to perforate for the stitching. Also, it's Halloween time around here. Look at our gourds. So, back to the business at hand. We're gonna get the top one in first here. Hopefully you can see that. My hand's gonna cover it a bit as I tap it, but that's where it's gonna land. And we'll just punch it through. And we are through both layers of leather. See that? Alright, let me get readjusted and get the rest of those punched in, and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, excuse the shakiness as I hold this by hand. You can see we got the perforations all the way through both layers of leather, lined up, ready to sew. Now, if I was a true leatherworking artiste, I would do like they have here, which is a saddle stitch. And saddle stitching is an amazing art of which I am no good at. So we're just going to do a little bit of the old in out with the thread, tie up the end. And I think I have some white thread that's about that gauge and that color, hopefully. Well, we'll get close anyway. And then we'll sew that up. And when that's done, we'll trim away some of the backing leather strap. And then we got to punch holes in for, it's got a buckle like that on the bottom. So we'll punch some holes in to match. And she should be good to go. And here is where we are with the bag. You can maybe see I've got the new strap on there. It is just glued on for the moment. But hopefully you can make out the square of punched holes that go all the way through, ready to be hand stitched. And a couple things that I did off camera before I even started doing this video I wanted to go over too. And that is two things. I think two things. Well, here's the end of it already attached with the buckle to the original bottom strap. And you can see there's holes punched in there that match the original strap, the spacing and the size. And you can see the end of it is rounded. Now that round end I had mentioned before is done by using a little round chisel like that, made just for cutting leather. And you just, put it on the mat like that, and you have the leather on top of it, and you just pound it at the appropriate point, and it brings a little round edge perfectly to that width of leather. And for punching the holes, it's a similar deal. You can usually get a set of these, different size puncture diameters. And so I picked one that was closest to the original and punched those holes through. And the other thing that I did in preparation for matching this leather piece to the old one is beveled the edges. Now, in the original one, you can see there's kind of a soft edge. It's not a real hard angled edge. It might have been originally, but it's definitely softened over time. And most times when you get scrap leather straps or leather blanks, they're very crisp, sharp edges, and that wouldn't match well. And you probably don't want a really crispy edge on something that you're going to be slinging over your shoulders and taking on and off. You want it to be somewhat rounded. And you see that's already rounded. So let me quick show you, like, here's what a normal chunk from my leather scraps looks like. Really crispy edge on there. It's fine, but it just doesn't look professional. It doesn't look like a finished piece. It looks like a real raw piece. So what this is an edge beveler. Hopefully that's going to focus on there. Don't know if it is. Focus. Just like a little edging tool. And there's standard sizes. I think it's usually like 1, 2, or 3 are the sizes. This is a 2. You can see the 2 on there. And that's about the right size. And you just it's almost like a little leather router. And you just kind of put it on the edge and just do a smooth, straight cut. And it just kind of takes the crispy edge off the leather and gives you a little rounded one. So that I already did on there, but I thought I'd go over that so you can kind of see the little details that make leather nice and not look too cobbled together. All right, next step is getting the thread and needle out and hand stitching up and down through all those holes on the little box of stitching holes there. And once that's done, this is ready to go. I looked through the threads that I have, and even though I have plenty of the right color thread, even this finer thread, you can see on the front. Sorry about the wobble there. Like this stuff here. Where is it? There it is. It's finer thread, but the stuff I have still looked a little too narrow, a little too fine. And especially on something that's going to hold some weight, I feel like if you get too fine of a thread in there, it actually risks starting to cut through the leather if it's really tweaked on. So I went to the fabric store and looked through all their threads. Most things were still way too thin unless I got to really chunky twine. But this embroidery thread has a nice thickness to it that I think will work. It's a little harder to hand sew with a needle, at least the needles I have, because the ends are so, it's multi-thread, so it's kind of hard to navigate those into a needle eye, but we'll make it work, and I think this thread will look nice. I bought white and then kind of an off-white, and this off-white really matches well. So that's what we'll use. And then I will rearrange things and get to hand sewing this little stitch. We are starting the sewing process, and I've got, you can see the needle there. I've got that through once over from underneath, over the top, and down through the first hole. And I do a lot of patch sewing and clothing customizations, so I'm pretty good at estimating the amount of thread that this whole thing will take. So I've already pre-cut that, and I can see on the end just a double knot to hold it there. Should be all we need, and then we'll trim away the excess at the end. So we'll pull that knot right up to the top, and we'll grab the needle. And one thing, especially when you're working through a couple thick layers of leather, is sometimes you need pliers to pull the needle through each time, because it's hard to get your fingers on there. And there have been plenty of times where I'm trying to pull a needle through with my fingers, and I slip, and then that needle slices a nice little line down my finger, clean and deep. No fun. Don't do that. If you have a stuck needle, don't keep cranking on it with your hands. Grab a pliers. And we'll make sure this doesn't snarl up, as this stuff really likes to do a lot more than thread does. It really likes to snarl up. So sorry about wobbly cam there again. I keep bumping it. Okay, you don't need to see my arm in full glory. You need to see their first stitch of many. So we'll just repeat this until we get to the end of it. Should look cool. Already like it. It is finished. I added one more layer of row of stitches down here just for extra detail and strength. I think it looks great. The embroidery thread matched really well. And it's a very good looking repair. I would say the only criticism I would give myself is, since this is the first time I've stitched leather, and again, I'm not a sewing expert in general, but what I came up with in order to get these stitches shoulder to shoulder like this in a nice even box all the way around is, when I came up from the back with the first stitch, pulled it up through the back, and then the knot kept it there. So then I jumped over to the next hole and went back down. But at that point, I couldn't come back up through the same hole to get the next stitch next to it. So what I ended up doing was jumping one over, stitching back to the previous hole, then jumping one over and stitching back. And that way all these stitches were shoulder to shoulder like that, without there being a gap where it went down and under and back over. So that seemed to work. Again, I kind of made it up as I went along, but it looks good. The only thing I would say is that it leaves, sorry about the bumpy cam, it leaves a little bit of a mess on the back. It's not terrible, and, not a tragedy, and you'll never see that anyway, but I think I could definitely improve my technique so we don't have quite the bundle on the back like that. But not too bad for my first time out, and definitely sturdy and usable. One last thing I would say is, on a lot of other videos I've watched of leather stitching, a common thing is to take the ends of the thread when you're done stitching and kind of take a lighter and quickly melt away the last few threads so you get a nice clean finish. And since this is the first time I've ever used embroidery thread on anything, I thought I'd test it out on a bit of scrap thread. And I do not recommend that, because this stuff goes up fast. At least the stuff I have, it went up like a fuse. So don't use a lighter to do the finishing touch on this. Just knot it up tight and cut it tight and leave it like that. But there she is, both straps. Looking good. Ready to go. Calling it a win. All right, there must be something else around here I gotta fix.